Hey guys, tonight we're leaving behind your phone charger, your inbox, and that weird leftover in the fridge to walk beneath a starlit sky in KwaZulu-Natal. You hear crickets always the same rhythm and, somewhere not far off, a drumbeat pulses like a slow heartbeat. The village women sit cross-legged around low fires. The clink of tiny beads clicking between fingers, bright against the dark. You kneel beside them, and already you're invisible. Just another sleepy spirit, quietly watching the world weave itself together. In your hand, a handful of tiny glass beads. Sky blue, milky white, blood red, deep green. You try threading them, but your fingers fumble. You are not Zulu, not born into this quiet language of shape and rhythm. But tonight, you're going to learn. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where you're tuning in from. Dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You begin by watching how the women move. Fingers know what yours do not. No measuring, no second guessing. It's rhythm, memory, and muscle. A pattern builds on a thin strip of fabrica sash, maybe, or a headband. Might look abstract to you now, just dots and zigzags, but to someone raised in this language, it's a poem, sharp whispered truth. Historians still argue whether the earliest Zulu beadwork came directly from indigenous seeds and shells, or was a rapid innovation. After European contact brought Venetian glass beads via Portuguese traders. Either way, by the early 1800s, beadwork had become a vital Zulu art form, half fashion, half encrypted message. Back then, before emojis or secret Instagram accounts, young Zulu women told their stories in beads. Not spoken stories, you wouldn't say them out loud. Not if you wanted to avoid embarrassment or full-on chaos. Instead, they stitched confessions into necklaces and armbands. A green bead might whisper, "I'm promised." A red one could suggest danger or longing. Blue often meant loyalty or grief. But don't get cocky thinking you've cracked the code. The same color might mean something totally different a few villages over. The dictionary of Zulu beadwork doesn't exist. It's local. It's personal. It's deliciously unstable. Some nights a girl might bead until dawn, weaving and unweaving her thoughts until they land just right. The patterns she chooses have to carry her feelings, but also allow for deniability. What if someone misreads her? Or worse, reads her too well? Your eyes droop, and the firelight blurs a little. You imagine her, a teenager with a restless heart and a pouch of beads, threading hopes into a bracelet she maybe pretends she dropped. Will he find it? Will he get it? Probably wouldn't, but she hopes. In time, her bracelet could end up tied to a branch. That's not just folk art, it's social strategy. Trees around homesteads might quietly bloom with these silent messages, threads of glass, stiff with emotion. No one has to say a word. The moon hangs low. A baby cries. Far off, then settles. You blink slowly. A woman beside you snips a thread with her teeth and ties off a row of yellow triangles. She's not young. She beads steadily, with the unbothered calm of someone who's been ignored by 5 children and outlived 2 husbands. Her work is slower, but more intricate, maybe even risky. Did you know that during some early 20th century Christian missions, Zulu beadwork was discouraged, sometimes outright banned? Missionaries feared its pagan roots, its sensual undertones, its coded rebellion. But beadwork didn't die. It just moved indoors, or underground, or into corners where needles clicked quietly while prayers were being said. Fringe detail. Their S1 recorded incident of a missionary burning a pile of beaded garments because he swore he saw unholy geometry. The mind reels. Anyway, your host tonight is definitely holy if soft. Sparkly materials count. You find your own thread and start stringing a pattern, even if it means nothing. It doesn't matter. The rhythm is the real ceremony here. Glass beads didn't exist in pre-colonial southern Africa. That's a cold fact. Before contact with traders, Zulu artisans used seeds, shells, and ostrich egg fragments, which while lovely were fragile and limited in color. But glass changed everything. Suddenly, colors multiplied. Imports flooded in from Venice, Bohemia, and later, India and China. What started as trade became transformation. Historians still debate whether this dependence diluted Zulu craft or elevated it. Honestly, depends who you ask and how much they like museums. Stretch out, toes tingling. You're lying on woven grass mats now, close to the fire. The beading women haven't stopped. You feel time slowing the way it does when there's no internet and your only clock is the way the stars shift. Someone sings softly, just a hum really. You can't catch the words. It's not for you anyway. Across the fire, a girl lifts her necklace, inspecting it. There's a single black bead near the middle. It's the only one of its kind. Maybe she's hiding a breakup in plain sight, or warning someone, or daring them to ask. The black bead stares back like a pupil in an eye. You look away. Maybe it's rude to see too much. You don't fall asleep yet, but you soften, like softened wax, like worn stone. Everything around you glows with purpose even. The insects sound like they're weaving patterns of their own. You keep stringing beads even though your thread is crooked and the pattern is nonsense. It's okay. This is a place where even beginners matter. Here, every hand adds to the loom. Even yours. Your fingers ache a little, but in the nicest way. It's a kind of ache that says you did something ancient, something right. Sit back, letting the half-finished strand of beads dangle between your fingers like a sleepy vine. It glitters faintly in the firelight, but you're beginning to see that light isn't the only way to read beads. It's the color that sings. And each one is like a syllable in a language that isn't taught in schools. Color, you learn, is everything. Young woman beside you holds up a nearly complete apron called an isagaj. You lean closer, and she laughs a little, letting you admire it without touching. That would be rude, obviously. Even beads have boundaries. The pattern on the apron is full of soft blues and pale whites, with a strong red line running through it like a vein. It's beautiful, yes, but also strategic. This piece isn't just decoration, it's a full emotional map. Blue, that often means faithfulness, white purity, or spiritual connection. And red could be intense love, or rage. Or a fight that happened last week and is still not over. Zulu beadwork isn't subtle because it's dainty. It's subtle because it's layered. And here's the kicker. The exact same color scheme, worn in a different village or on a different day, might say something completely different. Historians still argue whether these meanings were ever standardized. Some say there were widely accepted themes like white symbolizing virginity or yellow denoting wealth. Others insist meanings were mostly local, invented and adapted within families or communities. In other words, good luck decoding a necklace from 1890 without a local grandma on hand. You lie back and imagine an invisible map of color meanings stretching across hills, streams, and valleys, every community painting in its own dialect of glass. Honestly, it's like trying to translate dreams. But there are some patterns, if not full dictionaries. For instance, the traditional Ibhik triangle motif, an abstract geometric shape with rows of color pointing in different directions, has been used for generations. Some believe the point of the triangle indicates gender or social status. Point down, female, point up, male, both at once. You guessed it, something complicated, possibly romantic, possibly scandalous. The triangle's color progression also tells a story. If it fades from white to green, it might mean new beginnings or a hopeful marriage. If it moves from black to red, it might whisper of mourning or revenge. And here's your fringe fact for the evening. There's a recurring color combination of blue-black and pink that some elders claim shouldn't tea ever be used unless you willing to call something forward. What that something is, no one says, you don't ask. Not tonight. Some women say they can read someone just by glancing at their beadwork. Others play coy, as if the truth is hidden to meanings deep. Not sure who's bluffing. Maybe everyone. One thing's for sure. These color codes aren't random. They're not just for beauty, though they certainly are beautiful. Beads talk. Back when the practice of wearing large beaded panels across the chest or hips was more common, you could walk through a village and know without speaking who had lost someone recently, who was newly in love, who was part of a marriage negotiation, and who might be harboring a grudge. Imagine if your favorite hoodie could silently out you for texting your ex. Same vibe. Some young Zulu women today still learn these meanings, but they also remix them. You'll see modern beadwork at weddings, birthdays, and festivals, often using older patterns but adding neon pinks, plastic elements, even emoji shapes. Historians debate whether this is loss or innovation, but anyone who has ever doodled a heart in the margins of a notebook knows styles change, but feelings stay sneaky. Back near the fire, a mother untangles a mess of green beads and sighs. Her toddler has been chewing on them. You catch the child, his eyes still glittering from whatever crime he just committed, and you both silently agree that teeth should not be involved in art. The mother begins a new strand. This time, she's picking colors so carefully that even you can tell it's serious. Mostly black, with small bits of deep blue. She looks focused, sad maybe, or proud. It's impossible to tell, and honestly, that's the point. You blink slowly, head drifting sideways. Your body relaxes as if the color's rhythm is happening inside you now. The thing about Zulu beadwork is that it's always multidimensional. Even the colors argue with each other, like take green. You'd think green means nature or fertility, right? Sure, sometimes, but other times it means jealousy, or even illness. And then there's yellow, which on one bracelet might mean wealth and happiness, but on another, especially if paired with black, could scream betrayal. The combinations matter. The wearer's story matters. Nothing exists in isolation. Color is emotional, political, familial. It's flavored like tea steeped differently depending on who's pouring. Once, in the early 1900s, a missionary tried to create a color chart to translate Zulu beadwork for European readers. It was printed in a small booklet and handed out to British collectors. The chart declared that white meant peace, red meant war, blue meant love, and so on. It was wildly wrong. Imagine trying to explain sarcasm using emojis and getting it all backwards. That booklet is now considered more comical than useful, though one copy still lives in a university archive where researchers now use it as a case study in cultural misreading. You're half asleep now, brain drifting like a boat on still water, and the colors swirl behind your eyelids. Blue, black, green, white. They blend, separating, reforming like feelings that haven't made up their minds yet. Someone walks past you wearing a sash that practically buzzes with meaning. The beadwork looks aggressive tight, dark shapes with small pops of crimson. It pulses like a warning, or maybe a dare. Whatever it means, you're smart enough not to ask. You stay quiet, just watching, just learning the colors as they whisper. Morning comes without warning, like someone flipping a switch. No rooster, just the sudden warmth of sun across your face and the soft rustle of life waking up. You blink, momentarily confused about where you are, until the beads catch your eye. It's still there, sparkling like tiny rainbows across the fabric, still telling their stories whether anyone's listening or not. The fire's out, and the beading circle has shifted. Some women have gone to tend to chores. Others now sit under a nearby tree. Smaller group, older women mostly, are beading slower, quieter, their movements heavy with memory. This is where you learn something most outsiders never do: beading ice and tea. It's just about fashion or flirting at inheritance. Passed down mother to daughter, aunt to niece, grandmother to granddaughter, and with each lesson comes more than skill. It comes with stories, warnings, rituals, a few curse words probably, but always love, buried deep under discipline. You shuffle closer to an elderly woman whose hands move like she's sewing air. Her name is Mamdovu, and no one dares interrupt her when she's beading. Not even the toddlers, which is a miracle in itself. You watch her thread 3 tiny black beads followed by a deep green and then a single white one. She doesn't look at her fingers, just the horizon. Historians still argue whether these older women were once considered community record keepers, or if that's a romanticized idea from later ethnographers. Either way, their presence radiates a quiet authority. They're not just crafters, they're living hard drives. Every knot tied, every line of beadwork, they're all backups of family memory, heartbreaks, and long-dead ancestors. The process of learning beading traditionally begins in girlhood, often around the time of puberty. Not just because the fingers are small and nimble, though they are, but because this is when language takes on weight. When emotions start getting too complex for shouting and too embarrassing for direct speech, beadwork becomes the perfect medium. In this community, the phrase yukakambaka, Kwezina loosely translated as the blossoming of hands, marks the moment a girl begins her first proper beading. It's low-key ceremonial, not a full-blown party, but a respected step. The girl sits beside her grandmother or mother, and together they begin a new pattern. One that no one else touches. It's personal. Her hands blossom and her voice becomes colorful, even if silent. You imagine yourself at that age awkward, too loud, probably bad at threading, and you feel a strange ache. Not quite envy. More like awe. These young girls aren't just learning art. They're being entrusted with a family's emotional bandwidth. There's an old story, Mom Dovu mutters to herself as she beads. You don't catch all the words, but someone nearby translates for you softly. It's the story of a girl who beaded her entire heartbreak into a single necklace. She never told anyone what it meant. But when she died decades later, her sister buried the necklace with her. Some say it was still warm. Here's a fringe detail for you. In some rural areas, girls used to bead their own burial sashes as teenagers just in case. A kind of glittering insurance policy for the afterlife. You gotta admire that kind of long-term planning. Wonder how many secrets have gone to the grave, disguised as triangles and lines of glass? As Mom Devu works, you notice her beads aren't like the others. Slightly larger, slightly cloudy. These are vintage, maybe even century-old trade beads passed down like rings. Some Zulu families still have stashes of antique beads hidden away, wrapped in cloth, stored in jars, guarded like treasure, 'cause they are treasure. Bead inheritance is complicated, though. If your great-grandmother was a powerful beader, her work might be split up among descendants, each piece carrying a slice of her life. But sometimes, families fight over beadwork, like they would over land or livestock. Not all traditions are peaceful. There is even an infamous case from the 1970s where two rural families ended up in court over a contested wedding necklace believed to have luck properties. The judge, utterly confused, advised they burn it to avoid conflict. They refused. Instead, the necklace was cut in two. Your own fingers twitch now, as if they remember something they never learned. Maybe you're dreaming. Maybe not. You pick up a scrap of beadwork someone left behind. It's frayed at one end, with a repeating diamond motif. You try to decode it. The center bead is pink, surrounded by a dark ring, then alternating yellow and green. What could that mean? No one answers. Because here's the secret. Sometimes bead patterns mean nothing at all. Sometimes a girl just likes the way colors feel when they sit next to each other. Historians try to ascribe meaning to every detail, but some elders roll their eyes at this. Sometimes one woman shrugs, we just like what we like. So remember that. Not everything that glitters is prophecy. Some of it is just really good taste. A soft breeze blows through the trees now, and the beadwork hanging from low branches clinks gently. It's like wind chimes, but quieter, more secret. You lie back again, letting your eyes half close. You feel the weight of all the women who came before you, even if they weren't your ancestors. Their patterns hover in your mind, their threads still stretched across time. And as you drift, you think this. Maybe your hands aren't blossoming. Maybe they're remembering. By now, your breath is slower, heavier. Your limbs lie still like damp laundry in the sun. Your mind is turned soft and spongy. Perfect. That's exactly where we want you for this next part. Because now we step into ceremony. Not the loud kind with drums and feasts, but the slow, deliberate ones. The ones that require silence, patience, and beads. Someone ties a strip of fabric around your wrist, not tightly, just enough to rest there. On it, a short row of beads is sewn. White, green, black. You don't ask what it means. You've learned. If it's meant for you, the message will find you. Across from you, two women begin preparing for what looks like a quiet ritual.
Not religious.
Not theatrical, just old. One of them lays out a beaded panel, something like a sash or bib, carefully smoothing each edge. The other begins removing her jewelry, placing her bracelets and earrings beside her like old bones. This is a pre-marriage ceremony, or rather a rehearsal for one. Today's piece is called an umka wasifazania, bridal chest covering. These heavily beaded panels are worn during traditional Zulu weddings and communicate the bride's intentions, family status, and even her emotional stance toward the marriage. In modern times, most Zulu brides don't make their own pieces. They commission them or wear heirlooms. But in smaller communities, some still bead theirs slowly over months, incorporating input from mothers and aunts. Every bead sewn in is like a stitch in an emotional contract. The woman in front of you, she's young, not quite ready for marriage, but learning the motions. This ritual is part of her training. She must learn not just to bead the panel, but to carry its weight. And the weight is real. Some panels can include thousands of beads sewn into dense geometric patterns, often backed by layers of fabric or leather. When worn, it hugs the chest like armor. Protective, decorative, symbolic, heavy in all the ways that matter. Historians still argue whether certain patterns were exclusive to certain clans or regions. Some say yes, that motifs acted like surnames in geometric form. Others argue that patterns evolved so quickly and were adapted so often that any attempt to pin them down is wishful thinking, like trying to label wind. But here's a mainstream fact for you. Traditional Zulu weddings, especially in the pre-colonial period, involved several stages each marked by specific clothing and bead arrangements. What you wore during the bride's arrival was different from what you wore during the bride price negotiations, different again from the celebration feast. Each of these stages had its own beaded vocabulary. And women had to coordinate carefully because sending the wrong message could spark a family disagreement or, worse, public embarrassment. Imagine showing up in the "I'm still deciding" apron when your uncles are already arguing over cows. Awkward. You look again at the practice panel laid out before you. This one has an unusual element: tiny cowrie shells sewn into the corners. One of the older women notices your interest and leans in, her voice gravelly. "Fertility," she says, or just a prayer. Apparently, cowrie shells are traditional symbols of femininity, wealth, and fertility. They're also just really pretty, which doesn't hurt. Sometimes, they're added to bridal beadwork not as a statement, but as a hope. A gentle nudge to the ancestors like, "Hey, no pressure, but babies would be nice." You retold that this young woman will wear the panel tonight as part of a dream ritual. It's private. The idea is that you sleep with the bridal panel under your mat, and the ancestors visit to give feedback. Harsh critics, those ancestors, no Yelp. Stars, just vibes. There is a fringe belief, though it is fading, that if the panel isn't approved in the dream, it will unravel by morning. You glance at the woman nervously. She smiles and shrugs, like someone who's passed enough tests not to fear a pop quiz. Someone brings a second piece of beadwork now, this time a long strand worn around the waist. You've seen these before? It's good? Traditionally worn by young women before marriage, these waist beads are both decorative and deeply personal. They sway as you walk, and if you're dancing, well, they become a performance. But they're also coded. Blue and green may signal readiness for courtship. Black and white might signal a period of mourning or spiritual cleansing. The movement of the beads, how they catch the light, how they shift with each step, is what your voice doesn't. You imagine yourself wearing them, walking slowly past someone you secretly like. No texts, no DMIs, just the subtle flicker of color across your hips. Honestly, flirting through beadwork might be more sophisticated than anything modern dating has achieved. You're told that during wedding week. The bride wears her most elaborate beadwork, sometimes passed down through generations, sometimes made in a rush of late-night sewing and last-minute doubts. She might wear her mother's necklace and her aunt's waist beads. She becomes a patchwork of her lineage, sewn together with meaning. A historical aside, in the 1800s, colonial officials observing these ceremonies wrote extensive, wildly biased reports about native costumes, often dismissing the beadwork as primitive or excessive. One early missionary complained that bead-covered brides looked like walking chandeliers, which, let's be honest, sounds amazing. But those same observers failed to realize they were witnessing one of the most complex visual languages in southern Africa. A bride wasn't just wearing beads, she was speaking through them. You just didn't understand the dialect. Now the women begin singing softly, not in unison, not quite, more like weaving threads of sound together. The beadwork shivers under their touch, almost responding. You lie still and listen. No one claps. No one stands.
Oh.
But something shifts in the air. Ceremony ends not with a bang, but with a knot. One last bead is added. Everything is sealed. The sun has shifted just enough to nudge its way under the shade, landing in lazy stripes across your body. You're not sure how long you've been lying there, eyes half-lidded, watching the day stretch itself out like a cat. But something new is happening now. You can hear it before you see it, the distinct rhythmic jingle of feet brushing the earth, layered with the whisper of fabric and the soft chime of beads knocking gently against skin. You sit up slowly, your joints protesting in that creaky, we've been napping too long way, and catch sight of a group of young women moving in a slow, synchronized line. They're dancing, but not with fanfare. This is a procession, and at the center of it all, beads. So many beads. Beads across shoulders, beads dripping from earlobes, beads sewn into skirts that swish like tidewater, beads circling ankles, wrists, even hair. What you're seeing now is the Umemelo Ceremonia, coming-of-age ritual for Zulu girls. Traditionally performed around the age of 21, though the age can vary widely. Depending on family resources and cultural preference, the meaning remains the same. She's stepping into womanhood, and the beadwork she wears today doesn't just decorate her, it declares her. This moment is what some call the beaded debut. Think Quinceañera meets royal presentation, meets spiritual Instagram post. Except instead of hashtags, you've got waist beads. And instead of makeup tutorials, you've got your great-grandmother whispering, "Don't you dare trip." The main piece of the Umemelo ensemble is the izagaj, those dazzling waist-length bead belts that swing and glitter as the initiate moves. Every color has been chosen with purpose, every stitch placed with reverence. Red might speak of strength, green of new beginnings. But remember, context is everything. A single white bead in one ceremony might represent purity. In another, it could mean loss. Historians still argue whether there was ever a standardized color code, or if meanings shifted family to family like regional dialects. It's a debate as colorful as the beads themselves. And then, the spear. Yes, a spear. During Umemelo, the initiate is often given a symbolic spear to Karya Kanto. Not because she's expected to charge into battle, but because it represents readiness, protection, and dignity. The idea is, she now has the right to choose her path. And the community recognizes her as someone whose voice matters. Picture that, a young woman wrapped in beadwork holding a spear, moving to the slow rhythm of ancestral pride. Honestly, your spine tingles. She dances forward, approaching a group of elders seated on grass mats. Among them is Mam Davu, who you now realize has shifted from quiet teacher to ceremonial witness. Her face is unreadable serene, perhaps, but her eyes are watching everything. Nothing escapes her. The girl kneels, her beadwork pooling around her like sequined water. The elders hum. One of them ties a new bead string to the girl's ankle. It's thin, pale blue and gold. It's probably invisible to most, but it hums with significance. It's like the final touch in a painting. It's small yet vital. A period at the end of a long poetic sentence. Here's a quirky tidbit. In some households, it's believed that the bead strings worn during Umemelo should never be cut. If they break, it's an omen sometimes of illness, sometimes of betrayal. So girls often wrap them multiple times or even coat them in resin to prevent accidental snapping. It's fashion meets magical insurance. As the girl rises again, her steps seem different, heavier, grounded. Not in burden, but in ownership. She isn't walking like someone playing dress-up anymore. She's walking like someone who knows she's been seen, named, and woven into the great quilt of womanhood. You realize something profound as you watch. The ceremony isn't for the audience. It's not for the photos. It's for her. The beading, the spear, the singing. It's all scaffolding for a moment that might otherwise float away, unnoticed. You glance around and notice other girls in the crowd watching with wide, calculating eyes. Some nervously fidget with their own bead strings, perhaps imagining their turn. Some already wear beginner bead belts, simpler, less ornate, but clearly in progress. They're next. They're watching and learning, just like you. There's even a boy or two, pretending not to stare. One of them elbows the other, nodding toward a girl whose beads shine particularly bright. No words are spoken, but the message is clear. Beadwork flirts for you. It's like wearable confidence. Of course, it hasn't always been easy for these traditions to survive. During the mid-20th century, when Western influences and missionary schooling reached even the most remote parts of KwaZulu-Natal, beadwork was sometimes discouraged. Labeled heathen, tribal, or unmodern, many young girls were shamed into hiding their bead strings beneath uniforms. Some cut them off entirely, a quiet loss. But the traditions endured, smuggled home in bags, tucked under pillows, or learned at grandmother's knees during school breaks. The thread, once stretched thin, was never fully severed. Nowadays, Many Zulu families blend old and new. A girl might wear her ceremonial beads in the morning, then change into jeans and a hoodie by afternoon, and why not? Culture isn't a costume, it's a closet. You get to mix and match. The Umemulo reaches its quiet climax now. Girl is presented with small gifts, blankets, money, even modern items like phones or perfume. And then, in one sweeping gesture, she's wrapped in a beaded shawl. Not heavy, but enveloping. It's like a visual lullaby telling the world, she's grown now. Speak to her with respect. The elders begin to sing again. This time, it's a song of release. Of sending her out into the world with all the protection they can muster, stitched, sung, and sealed. And just like that, the dance ends. No applause, no fireworks, just a breath. You lie back again, oddly full, as if you've eaten something rich and ancient. Your eyes close, and you imagine the sound of beads swaying as you drift towards sleep, or a girl is tying her first knot. Somewhere else, a woman is removing her last string. And everywhere in between, the beadwork hums. Sleep has begun to soften your muscles. You feel like a cat napping on a windowsill, warm, floppy, and vaguely aware of passing time, but not bothered by it. You stay there, tucked into that haze, until a sudden glint catches your eye. It's a man, more precisely a man wearing beads. Yes, it's a thing, and not a modern reinvention either. Zulu men have long worn beadwork, though not always in the showy jewel box way you might expect. Their beadwork is structured, symbolic, often hidden until the right moment calls it into view. This particular man is adjusting a wide collar-like piece called an ipai. It's made of white beads with bold accents of red and black, arranged in angular chevrons. It rests just above his chest and moves stiffly as he breathes. You watch as he fastens it carefully, like a knight donning his armor. Except this isn't battle prep, it's negotiation time. See, beadwork in Zulu tradition wasn't always about flirtation or fashion. Sometimes it was tactical. This man is preparing to attend a lobola discussion, the traditional bride price negotiation, and his beadwork is designed to project strength, status, and familial pride. Kind of like how people today put on suits for job interviews, but with more cowrie shells. He lifts a second piece now, a headband strung with narrow bead strips, each ending in tiny knots. It wraps around his forehead like a crown, modest but deliberate. You notice his hands pause on the final knot. He closes his eyes, breathes in through his nose, and then tightens it into place. The transformation is subtle but complete. He is no longer just a man. He is a representative. Historians still argue whether men's beadwork followed the same color language as women's. Some believe men adopted complementary colors to match their partner's status. Others argue that male bead patterns were simplified, even coded differently, due to gendered norms and the desire to distinguish roles in public ritual. But what's clear is this: men's beadwork was never random. Whether tied to ancestral rites, spiritual protection, or community diplomacy, each string of beads said something. And in ceremonies like Lobula, where tensions ran high and family pride was at stake, every detail mattered. Here's a fun fringe detail. Among some Zulu clans, a bead string worn near the shoulder was believed to absorb bad intentions, kind of like a spiritual lightning rod. Men who were particularly skilled at negotiations might wear extra rows of beads stitched into their cloaks, just in case someone tried to jinx the meeting. No word on whether it worked, but hey, better over-beaded than over-cursed. The man moves off down the path now, walking with deliberate calm. He passes others, some younger men wearing simple bead armbands, some older, in woven wraps with subtle bead edging. There's a quiet dignity to them all, like they know something modern men forgot somewhere between neckties and cologne ads. You follow at a respectful distance, drawn by curiosity. The air is heavy with expectation. When you reach the circle where the labala will take place, you see more beadwork than you expected. On mats laid carefully in a semicircle, women sit in support, roles, mothers, sisters, aunts. Many wear beaded sashes across their chests, each style indicating their relation to the bride. One wears a bold green andilo chest strap with triangle motifs. She's the bride's sister, you're told. Another has long black and white fringe hanging from her ears that marks her as a widow and elder with spiritual clarity. In the center of this ring, a small square mat has been laid. On it, nothing but a single beaded stick. You tilt your head, or walking stick, a pointer, neither. It's a symbol. That stick, you learn, is called the ntanga. It's often used in ritual or negotiation settings. Beaded at both ends and unadorned in the middle, it represents balance, give and take, offer and reply. As the bride price is discussed, the stick is touched by each speaking party in turn. A kind of ritual handshake that keeps tempers in check. Discussions begin. Low voices, polite phrasing, laced with veiled insults, clever counters, and just a hint of drama. It's like family Game of Thrones, but with cows instead of dragons. The man in beads doesn't raise his voice, simply waits for the right moments, then speaks. When he gestures, the beads at his wrist catch the sun, flashing like punctuation marks. And you're riveted. It's oddly comforting watching negotiations that include symbolism so ancient it practically hums. You realize that beadwork doesn't just decorate bodies, it mediates conversations, smooths conflicts, makes people pause, observe, consider. And maybe that's something the modern world could borrow: some beaded boundaries, a touch of ceremony when things matter. As talks stretch on, you notice something else. Children are hovering at the edge of the gathering. They're not being shooed away. Instead, they're allowed to sit and watch quietly. Their own bead strings twisted around their tiny wrists or tucked into belts. This isn't just negotiation, it's education. One boy near you is tracing the edge of his bead string with his finger, almost absent-mindedly. You lean closer and see that his beads are unevenly spaced, handmade, clearly, and maybe stitched in a rush. Still, he touches them like they're sacred. It's like maybe he made them himself. It's like they mean something no one else needs to understand. And maybe that's the heart of it. Beadwork, especially among Zulu men, isn't always loud. It doesn't scream its importance. It whispers it, quietly, repeatedly, persistently. Eventually, the negotiations conclude. The bride's family accepts the terms. There's a pause, half breath, half prayer, and a ripple of laughter, genuine and relaxed. The tension lifts like morning fog. The man removes his headband now, folding it gently into his palm. The act is deliberate, respectful. The beadwork has done its job. It can rest, and so can you. Your eyes close again as the crowd disperses, slow and content. Somewhere nearby, someone is humming. Beads jingle faintly with each step. You let yourself sink again, down into the dust and the quiet and the shimmering weight of centuries. Because even here, at rest, the beads are still speaking. You stir gently, lulled by the scent of burning herbs curling through the air like invisible lace. Someone's laid a small offering fire nearby. Nothing dramatic. It's just enough to crackle and whisper, sending soft puffs of wood smoke drifting into the sky. You feel it before you see it, the presence of something sacred stirring in the stillness. You're back at the homestead, but now it's dusk. The golden light leans long across the ground, and the beadwork around you glows like tiny constellations stitched to cloth. A woman is seated on a carved stool, and on her lap lies something that instantly captures your sleepy curiosity. A large, shallow basket overflowing with beads. Not just any beads. These are old, really old. Some are dulled from years of wear, others chipped or slightly melted. A few seem made from bone, others from shell, and a rare few glint like ancient glass smuggled through time. This is ancestral beadwork. The woman handling it is a beadkeeper, a kind of cultural archivist, even if no one calls her that out loud. She hums to herself, sorting beads into delicate patterns. Each line tells a story, not metaphorically, literally, because these are memory strands. In the Zulu tradition, certain families pass down bead strings not just as adornment, but as timeline like wearable journals. Grandmothers would craft strands to mark events, births, deaths, marriages, wars, relocations, and spiritual dreams. It's the original scrapbook, minus the glue sticks and awkward photo corners. The strand she's working on now belongs to her grandmother's grandmother. No one remembers all the events anymore, but the core moments are whispered through the generations like bedtime secrets. A blue cluster near the center. That was the Great Drought. The tiny green section with a red diamond. The birth of twins. One strong, one sickly. A black ring near the end. A death from smallpox. Quiet, reverent things. Scholars still argue whether such ancestral beadwork can be decoded universally. Some claim that color combinations point to fixed meanings across clans. Others say each family used its own system, personal, intuitive, and often unrecorded. Either way, most agree. These memory strands were not for show. They were rarely worn in public, kept tucked away, and brought out only for special rituals or storytelling nights. Quirky aside. During British colonial expansion, some missionaries were so puzzled by these intricate bead codes that they assumed the Zulu people were using them as covert language, like Morse code. But make it fashion. One even attempted to translate a strand into English, gave up after 2 weeks and accidentally glued a bunch of beads to his boots. Cultural anthropology wasn't exactly his calling. Back in the present, the beadkeeper has chosen a new pattern. Her fingers move slowly, selecting tiny bead after bead from the basket. There's no hurry. Beading is meditation here. Sacred act. You watch her thread each one with a rhythm that matches her. Breath in, bead. Out, knot in. Bead out, knot. You're invited to try, of course. At first, your fingers fumble like you've been cursed with the world's clumsiest thumbs. Beads roll away like mischievous marbles. But she smiles and shows you again, her hands gentle but firm. You eventually manage 3 green, blue, white. Not much but yours. She nods with a little approving grunt. Doesn't say it, but you can tell. She's letting you into something older than the stars. Nearby, children are gathering in a semicircle, rubbing sleep from their eyes and settling into a listening sprawl. It's time for Indaba Yabola bead talk. Out. Not every household does these anymore, but this one, they still believe in the power of night stories told through strands. The elder holds up a wide necklace, more collar than chain. Out. It's flat, with a geometric sunburst at the center. She taps it gently, and the room goes still. This, she says softly, was worn by your Grattan when she crossed the river. The children lean forward. She walked alone. It was raining. She carried a pot on her head with no hands. There's a soft gasp. No hands. But, the elder continues, her beads were tied tightly. They told the river not to take her. A logic may be tapping gently on your shoulder here, whispering things like physics and balance, and maybe she just had good posture. But here in this world of bead and belief, the logic of the story isn't the point. The beadwork held power because it was believed to hold power. And sometimes belief is stronger than rope. You spot another necklace on the mat. This one is all black with a few crimson knots. You're told it's from a time of mourning. A cholera wave had swept through the community, taking lives like a thief in the night. The woman who made that strand beaded it in silence, adding 1 red knot for each lost name. It was worn once at the funeral, then never again. Too heavy, she said. You feel the gravity in the room shift slightly. Everyone's still, listening to memory. Beadwork, it seems, doesn't just sparkle, it grieves. It remembers the things no one wants to say aloud. Yet it becomes the thing you wear when words aren't enough. And it protects. Some beads in the elder's basket have jagged little cracks, tiny chips at the edges. You learn these are called Isathunzi shadow beads. They're sometimes worn by healers or diviners to absorb unwanted spiritual energy. Not everyone believes in them. No one dares disrespect them either, just in case. You wonder, drowsily, what your own memory strand might look like. Maybe a messy coil of late-night thoughts and broken sleep. A few bright spots for joy. A dark twist here and there. String not yet finished, with space for more. The fire crackles again. The elder begins a final story, voice dropping low, slower now. It's about a woman who beaded a dream she had an entire necklace made from a vision. It had a snake, a river, and a single white bird. She wore it once, they say, then buried it at the base of an old tree so the dream could keep growing. The children are asleep now, their heads on each other's shoulders, hands still clutching loose beads.
Nice.
The elder stops speaking. The beads fall silent. And so do you. It's nearly night now. The sky hangs deep in purple, peppered with stars that feel unusually close, as if some benevolent deity turned down the brightness on the sun, just so the beadwork of the heavens could shine. And here on the ground, where fires flicker low and crickets begin their lullaby, another kind of ceremony unfolds. You're gently ushered away from the homestead toward a clearing. It's not a grand space, no pillars, no carved altars, Just an open patch of earth, marked by a circle of stones and a rustling hush. You're told this is Indawo, Yokakulaka, place for prayer, meditation, and ancestral communication. Tonight it will host a Sangoma ceremony. Now, hold on, don't panic. No one's sacrificing a goat in front of you. This isn't Hollywood mysticism. It's subtler, sleepier, and full of beads. A Sangoma or diviner emerges from the shadows. She wears layers of cloth stitched with bead patterns that shimmer even in low firelight. Around her neck hang several isafandala beaded cords worn by traditional healers to signify their spiritual calling. Some cords are frayed and faded, some new and tight. Each represents a different ancestral visitation, a different step in her training. She begins with a chant, low and rhythmic, barely louder than the breeze. Her beads sway and click with every movement. It's not dance. Exactly, it's more like conversation through motion, as if each gesture has grammar. You find yourself leaning in, not because she's loud, but because the silence around her is so complete. Beadwork plays a deep role in Zulu spiritual practice. For Sangomas, it's not just decorative, it's diagnostic, protective, prophetic. Each color combination helps align them with specific ancestral energies. Green for healing, white for purity, red for power, black for wisdom, blue for dreams. It's a wardrobe and a language rolled into one. Historians still argue whether specific patterns or color orders were universally recognized across Sangoma lineages. Some oral traditions suggest standardized meanings, passed down in song. Others believe Sangomas developed personalized bead codes based on visions or dreams. The truth, as always, dances somewhere between the threads. Tonight's Sangoma holds a small, flat bowl filled with bones, pebbles Anju, guessed it beads. These are her divination tools. She sings softly, calls out to the ancestors, and tosses the contents onto a mat with practiced grace. The bones land in a crescent. A single white bead spins outward, stopping near your foot. You freeze? Is it bad? Are you about to be cursed with eternal dandruff? But no, she smiles. That bead, she says, means clarity. A path cleared of confusion, or maybe it just means you've been sleeping well. Hard to say, dreams speak softly. You notice now that her head wrap is studded with beads too, not woven in but attached by tiny loops, removable, interchangeable. It's modular spirituality, Zulu style. Need to commune with a certain ancestor. Add the right bead, feel weighed down, remove one. It's both intuitive and intricate. Like if therapy came with a jewelry rack, it's a quirky tidbit. In some Sangoma practices, a specific BH doll weighs opaque white test placed under the tongue before dreamwork ceremonies. It's not swallowed. It's just held there to help taste ancestral speech. Whether it works or not is up for debate, but the ritual itself holds power. Sometimes belief is the bridge between silence and understanding. The ceremony continues. Now the Sangoma moves around the circle, trailing incense and softly shaking a beaded rattle. It's not loud, just a gentle click-click like rain on a tin roof. Each shake is timed to her footsteps, each turn of the rattle in sync with the rise and fall of her voice. She's weaving a net between this world and the next, and the beads are the knots that hold it all together. Children peek out from behind blankets. Some adults close their eyes, heads tilted as if listening for things that can't be heard. There's a stillness to the night now that wasn't there before. Then something unexpected. She begins to laugh. It's not a huge laugh, not dramatic, but soft, knowing. A chuckle that comes from recognition. She's speaking with someone unseen, someone who just made a joke. You don't need translation. You can feel the humor in her body. Beads bounce at her shoulders as she nods and replies aloud. That's very true, she says, looking into the trees. He always was stubborn. Everyone chuckles. Apparently ancestors have sass. Who knew? She sits now, beads gently clinking into her lap, and dips her fingers into a pouch of crushed herbs. She sprinkles them in a circle, muttering a phrase under her breath. Yukuboyusa, Impilaris, storing life or balance. It's then that you notice something quietly beautiful. Tucked into the grass nearby is a beaded doll, tiny hand-sized. Probably made by a child, but with startling symmetry. Its body is wrapped in red thread, its eyes formed by yellow beads. You're told these dolls, called umtwana, are made during healing rituals or times of personal grief, not to play with, to hold, or to keep safe, to whisper secrets to when sleep feels far away. You realize, with that slow softness of night thought, that beadwork here doesn't just decorate ritual, it is the ritual. It carries the unseen, holds the weight of prayer, channels memory and meaning through each glinting piece. Eventually the sangoma closes the circle. She kneels, presses her forehead to the earth, and hums one final note. It vibrates in the bones of the ground. The fire flickers low. The crickets resume their chorus. The ceremony is over, but something lingers. You walk back slowly, head full of questions you don't need answered. Maybe beadwork isn't meant to explain. Maybe it's meant to accompany. To hold space for things too large to name loss. Love, healing, time. Back at your bedroll, you find something left by your pillow. A single bead, green and white. No note, no explanation, just the bead. You smile, of course. You tuck it into your palm and close your fingers around it like a secret, like a thread of sleep. The wind slips through the grass like an old song, and you fall, not suddenly, but gently, into the quiet that follows ceremony. You wake, just barely, to a soft jingling. Not alarming, more like the distant clink of cutlery or wind chimes made of glass. It's a kind of sound your brain mistakes for part of a dream. You keep your eyes closed a moment longer, letting it thread through your thoughts like a needle through silk. When you open them, the sun is only beginning to stretch. A low fog hugs the ground, blurring the line between earth and sky. Someone nearby is already moving, tying cloth bundles, organizing bowls, brushing dust off a carved stool. You blink the sleep from your eyes and stretch until your shoulders pop. Today, they tell you, is a market day. Not a modern market with plastic chairs and Bluetooth speakers and those unfortunate knockoff Crocs. No, this is an old-school gathering, a mobile archive, a living museum wrapped in song and coin and chatter. And you guessed it, beads. You follow the slow trickle of people down a dusty path toward a clearing that seems to unfold like a storybook illustration. Blankets spread like lily pads across the ground, woven baskets heaped with beads in every imaginable color and texture, some in tight spirals, others in chaotic, joyful piles. Beaded necklaces hang from tree branches. Anklets glint beneath skirts as vendors pace. It's not just an economy, here it's a celebration. Because Zulu bead markets have long been as much about social weaving as they are about physical craft, transactions are made with stories, jokes, sideways glances, and light flirtation. Barter, sure, but also boasting, comparing, complimenting, teasing. A woman lifts a strand of black and red beads and says, "This one's for heartbreak." You raise an eyebrow. She nods solemnly, but stylish heartbreak. A teenager nearby holds up a beaded phone case. Yes, a phone case. It's neon yellow and blue, with a pattern that vaguely resembles a QR code. You're told he's trying to start a trend. He grins like someone halfway to going viral. You give him a thumbs up. Gotta respect the hustle. Historians still debate how long these open-air bead markets have existed. Some suggest they date back centuries, though they've certainly evolved. In older times, trade might have involved cattle, cloth, or salt. It's cash, mobile payments, even Instagram DMs, if you're lucky enough to have signal. But what hasn't changed is the energy. There's a rhythm to it. Voices rise and fall in harmony with clinking beads. Children chase each other between vendors. A woman claps her hands 3 times to signal she's made a sale. Somewhere, someone strums a guitar-like instrument, notes floating lazily through the morning. You pause at a stall run by a quiet man with weathered hands. His beadwork is ... different, tighter, more geometric. You ask, and he tells you it's influenced by Nyabel designs, another South African tradition known for bold colors and repeating patterns. Sometimes, he says, he mixes techniques. It's frowned upon by purists, but he shrugs. Culture is a river, he says. It flows and takes things with it. A poetic rebel. You like him. He shows you a belt decorated with tiny chevrons and zigzags. Embedded in the pattern are a few odd beads, wooden, slightly larger, obviously older. He leans in and whispers, "Those belong to my grandmother." Then he adds, "Don't lose it. She'll haunt you." Fair enough. A quirky tidbit. Some vendors believe talking to your beads before selling them brings better luck. Not chanting, just casual conversation, asking the beads to behave, to find a good owner, to shine nicely in the sun. One woman is overheard saying, "Don't embarrass me today, okay?" to a string of white and gold. You're not sure if the beads nod back, but they do seem to sparkle extra hard after that. You finally settle on a bracelet green, yellow, and red, woven in a triangular repeat. You're told it's a friendship code, meant to signify joy, trust, and not gossiping too much, which seems oddly specific. The vendor ties it around your wrist, fastens the loop, and gently taps your knuckles twice. A kind of blessing, maybe, or just her way of saying go live well. Nearby, two women argue cheerfully over the meaning of a bead necklace. One says it means a lover is faithful, the other insists it means the opposite. A third voice chimes in, "Maybe it depends on the lover." Everyone laughs. You get the feeling no one really wants a final answer. Mystery makes the story sweeter. As the sun climbs higher, the market begins to swell. More voices, more dust kicked up, or beadwork glinting under golden light. You pass a small performance circle where dancers stomp to the beat of drums, beads flashing around their ankles like bursts of static. Each step throws tiny sparkles into the air. Their bodies speak a language older than colonization, older than currency, older even than words. Historians have traced similar market rituals across pre-colonial Southern Africa gatherings, where beadwork was not just sold, but demonstrated. Where children were taught to weave between trade conversations, where stories and skills passed in handshakes, not textbooks. This market still holds that pulse. Even as phones buzz, even as modern fabric mingles with traditional skirts, even as bead bracelets are made with plastic instead of shell or bone, the thread remains. And in a very Zulu kind of way, the slow ceremonies of bead exchange still mirror deeper things. Generosity, tension, observation, memory. You wander to a shaded corner where a woman strings beads onto thin wire, with the ease of someone breathing. She has two sons napping beside her, heads resting on her lap. Her work moves like a lullaby, hypnotic, precise. You sit nearby and watch without speaking. She offers you a single bead, but you accept it like a sacrament. And for the rest of the afternoon, the sounds of the bead market rise and fall like waves around uridals, footsteps, laughter, the universal language of hands working with beauty. You're not just a visitor anymore, you're part of the story now. The bead market slowly dissolves into the afternoon like sugar into tea. No harsh goodbyes, no loud exits. It's just a gentle unraveling. One vendor hums while folding her blankets. Another carefully gathers her unsold strands, speaking to them softly as she coils them into a basket. Even the music seems to bow out politely, drifting into silence. You head back toward the homestead, your bracelet warm against your wrist. As you walk, your fingers absently trace its pattern: green, yellow, red, joy, trust, discretion. The little code tugs at your thoughts like a hook, pulling you somewhere deeper. Tonight, they say, there will be storytelling by firelight. And though your body wants to collapse into a nap somewhere shady, your curiosity pulls you onward. A fire has already been kindled when you return, its smoke spiraling up like lazy thoughts. People gather in a loose circle, some on stools, others on mats, or stretched out with heads in laps. There's an ease to the gathering, a softness to the way people lean into each other, or into the firelight, or into the rhythm of someone else's voice. A man in his 70s clears his throat and launches into a story that seems to have no beginning. One moment he's talking about a crocodile, the next about a missing herd of goats, and the next about a girl whose bead necklace could predict the weather. You're not entirely sure how it all connects, but that doesn't seem to matter. Everyone chuckles at the right moments. Everyone nods when the beads shimmer in the punchline. You lean in closer. See? Zulu storytelling isn't just about entertainment. It's an archive. And beadwork, oddly enough, often plays a supporting role. A woman's bracelet might show up as a character. A beaded skirt might hold a secret. One tale involves a girl who drops a bead every time she tells a lie, slowly revealing a glowing trail that betrays her darkest secrets. A fringe detail? In some oral traditions, it's believed that if you dream about a certain bead pattern, it means someone is telling your story somewhere far away. The idea that you could be fictionalized in real time somewhere out there. On another firelit night is both hilarious and slightly terrifying. The elders begin another tale, this one about a chief's son who wanted to marry a girl from a rival clan. Predictably complicated. Apparently, he tries to woo her by gifting her a necklace of black and white beads, the colors for courtship and challenge. But she sends it back with a single red bead tied to the end. Power, defiance, maybe a polite no, thanks. Or maybe try harder. Historians still argue whether love stories like these were actually used in courtship, or whether they were mostly just romantic legend. Some accounts insist suitors communicated entire emotional essays through necklaces. Others believe that kind of clarity would ruin the fun. Maybe ambiguity was the point, like texting with zero punctuation and hoping for the best. You're shown a few heirloom bead pieces as the stories go on. These aren't worn anymore, just kept in woven boxes lined with soft cloth. They're stiff with age, but still vibrant. One necklace has triangular patterns that shimmer with pinks and purples. It was made by a woman for her younger sister before she married into another village. A portable goodbye. A wearable hug. Another piece is more cryptic circles within squares, alternating black, yellow, and white. Some say it was protective, worn during a particularly tense season of drought. Others say it was purely decorative. The current owner just shrugs and says maybe it meant don't ask questions. You find that deeply relatable? A younger girl pipes up with a story of her own. Not traditional, but funny, about a dream she had, where all the beads in her box came to life and started arguing about which color was the most important. Spoiler. They eventually agreed on mood dependent. You nod solemnly. Sensible beads. A nearby elder remarks that when he was young, storytelling nights like this happened every week. No electricity, no TVs, just stories and stars and the soft punctuation of nighttime animals. Beads weren't just accessories, he says. They were memory anchors. Each necklace reminded you who you were, who you missed, what you feared, what you hoped. You glance down at your bracelet again. Suddenly, it feels heavier. Or maybe just more there. One last story. An old woman with a voice like rustling grass begins to speak. Her tone is low, almost conspiratorial. She tells of a woman who wove a necklace that could only be completed with beads collected from every stage of her life. One from childhood, one from marriage, one from sorrow, one from joy. The final bead, she says, must come from a stranger's hand. And when she found that bead, the woman whispers, she knew her story was complete. Everyone sits quietly for a beat too long after that. The fire crackles softly. No one says anything. It's the kind of silence that doesn't need to be filled. Then, as if nothing happened, people begin to stretch, yawn, rustle blankets. A boy accidentally steps on someone's toe and is met with theatrical groaning. The old woman chuckles. That's your bead of embarrassment, she says. You can't help but smile as you head off toward your sleeping spot. A few beads lighter than before, though you're not quite sure why. You realize something simple and profound. Storytelling isn't separate from beadwork. They're the same thing. Threads strung together, knot by knot, into something that shines imperfectly, unevenly, but beautifully under firelight. And just like that, another quiet ceremony ends. No applause, no closing credits, just night and stars. And dreams waiting to be stitched together. It's deep night now. The fire has quieted 2 embers, glowing like the last punctuation marks on a bedtime letter. You lie back, head pillowed on your arm, the bracelet around your wrist catching the moonlight like a wink from some forgotten ancestor. Sleep threatens to take you, gently but insistently. Still, something pulls you awake a little longer. Maybe it's the low hum of insects, or the rhythmic breath of someone sleeping nearby. Or maybe it's the lingering taste of those stories, the ones stitched with beads instead of words. Morning will come. Before it does, there's one last thread to follow. You stir and wander quietly past the slumbering homestead. The path crunches beneath your feet like crushed sugarcane. Overhead, the stars seem almost low enough to pluck, maybe make a necklace of constellations. Someone should try. Tonight you're meeting with an artisan they call Busi. She works in secret well. Not secret, just quiet, away from the buzz of the market. Her specialty, restorative beadwork, not just making, but mending. Pieces that are broken, frayed, or faded. She is the one people whisper about when a necklace needs more than a touch-up when it needs healing. Yes, you heard that right. Bead healing. Her place is small, surrounded by overgrown aloe and a scattering of empty clay pots. You knock lightly on a carved wooden post, and she waves you in without looking up. She is already at work, looping a broken necklace between her fingers like a puzzle she has solved before. "Come sit," she says, not unkindly, just focused. You settle onto a mat. Her workspace is a mosaic of colored tinny clay dishes holding different bead types. Red coral, dull ivory, shiny plastic, glass so old it looks like candy. There are tools too, tweezers, curved needles, and a hand-forged all that looks like it's seen things. She lifts the broken necklace toward the lamplight. This one belonged to someone's grandmother. Got caught on a thorn. See that? She gestures at a frayed thread. Means she was in a hurry. Maybe running. Maybe dancing. Hard to tell. Ask how she knows. Boosie smiles. Beads gossip. You just have to listen. A quirky detail for your mental scrapbook. She claims different bead colors react to emotion while she works. Blue makes her calm. Yellow makes her impatient. And black doesn't care. Just watches. She pours you a small bowl of warm, spiced milk. It tastes like clove and honey and something older. As she works, she hums not a tune exactly, more like a vibration. The beads seem to respond, glinting softly in time with her voice. You get the sense this isn't just craft, it's ritual, ceremony of repair. Historians still argue whether bead restoration was ever an official practice in traditional Zulu society, or more of a modern adaptation. Some scholars claim early Zulu women would disassemble old pieces to create new ones during rites of passage, sort of like taking memory and reshaping it for the next chapter. Others argue that once a piece was damaged, it was buried or burned. Let the spirit rest, they'd say. Busey leans into the former camp. To her, mending is sacred. She points to a bowl of orphaned bead singles without matches, slipped from necklaces over time, swept into corners, forgotten. These, she says, are the loneliest. She offers you one. A dull green glass bead, oval-shaped and cool to the touch. Keep it, she says. Let it hitch a ride in your pocket. You do? It's strangely comforting. She turns her attention to a different project now. A ceremonial sash once worn by a bride. The pattern is dense, nearly overwhelming. Diamonds, zigzags, stars. She points to a faded patch. See that, she says? That's grief. Too much blue in one place. Someone was hiding something. You raise an eyebrow, skeptical. She shrugs. It's not always on purpose. Sometimes our hands say more than our mouths. You believe her. You watch her swap out a few beads, reinforcing the thread with careful knots. Her fingers are swift but gentle. No wasted movement. No rush. She works like someone needing silence. And that's when she says it, almost to herself. Everything breaks. The beauty's in the fixing. You sit with that for a while. It's true of beadwork. It's true of people. Eventually, Boosie leans back and exhales. The piece is whole again, maybe not exactly as it once was, but stronger somehow. Wiser, it has been seen, touched, heard. She wraps it gently in cloth, ties it with thread, and sets it aside like a memory put to rest. You ask if she teaches others to mend like this. She shakes her head. No one wants to fix anymore. They only want new. But she doesn't sound bitter. Just tired. Before you leave, she offers you a small bundle for beads tied together with string. One red, one green, one black, one white. A mini survival kit, she calls it. For when you feel lost, she says. Dum-dum-da-da-da-da-da. Hold it, and remember that you're made of 1,000 tiny choices. You tuck it into your pocket next to the orphaned green bead. Outside, the air smells of aloe and wood smoke. So you follow the path back slowly, listening to the night around you, the rustle of leaves. The low coo of a distant bird, the quiet clink of beads inside your pocket. There's comfort in knowing even broken things can be whole again. Even forgotten beads can find new homes. Even stories fragmented, lost, frayed at the edges can be told again. You return to your sleeping spot with that thought wrapped around you like a blanket. And just before you drift off, you feel a tiny, warm weight in your pocket. not heavy, just remembered. Morning arrives with a slow stretch, sunlight pouring in like warm syrup over the hills. The homestead begins to hum low, gentle, a soft reboot. You blink awake, beads still tucked safely in your pocket, and rise to meet the day with that pleasantly groggy feeling that only follows a night full of firelight and stories. Today's path winds away from villages and markets, threading instead through the quieter corridors of the landscape places where beadwork isn't displayed but buried. You're heading toward a site of archaeological interest, though no one here would ever call it that. Around these parts, it's just known as the place of sleeping colors. The journey is slow. You pass grazing cattle, children playing with wheel rims, and the occasional bird that looks at you with the sort of judgment only birds can manage. You step around dung, duck under branches, and for a brief moment, you consider turning back to find breakfast. But then, over a small rise, you see it. A scattering of rocks, half submerged in the earth, surrounding a gentle dip in the land. At first glance, it's unremarkable. But as you draw closer, the earth tells a different story. Local oral histories say that this area once served as a ceremonial site. Not a temple, not a church, just a space. A pause in the world where people came to bury things that needed remembering. Hair, bits of cloth, and beads. You kneel and begin to brush gently at the soil. There it is, just under the surface. A sliver of color. A faded blue bead. Maybe glass, maybe clay. Worn by time, but still intact. You hold it up, and it gleams in the morning light, humble and brave. A mainstream historical fact for your mental bead string. Excavations across KwaZulu-Natal have uncovered grave goods that include beadwork, often interred with women and children. Some of these beads predate European contact, while others are clearly imported evidence of trade networks that reached as far as India and Venice. A fringe theory floats around certain circles, that specific bead configurations, when buried with a person, were believed to guide them safely into the afterlife, like spiritual boarding passes. One archaeologist even claims that certain patterns match up with star constellations, hinting at celestial maps encoded in glass and thread. Another swears the repetition of triangle motifs corresponds to lunar cycles. And still, historians argue whether those interpretations reflect ancient intention or modern projection. You don't have to decide. It's enough to sit here in the soft hush of old soil. Imagine a pair of hands tying this bead onto a string long before you were born. Maybe in grief, maybe in love. It's maybe just because it was beautiful. A local elder joins you at the site. His name is Siza, and he moves with the rhythm of someone who has never needed to hurry. He carries a walking stick adorned with tiny shells and a single red bead tied near the top. That one, he says, pointing to the bead you unearthed that's been waiting a long time. He sits beside you, unwrapping a cloth bundle from his satchel. Inside is a length of restored beadwork, fragile, with gaps. He lays it across his lap with reverence. This belonged to my mother's mother. She wore it every spring planting. She said the beads spoke to the seeds. You blink. Like, ... literally. He chuckles. Not with words. With memory. You trace the gaps with your finger. Why not repair it? 'Cause some holes are part of the story. Okay, fair. He leans back and tells you that before beads, before glass, there were seeds and shells and bone. In some regions, people used porcupine quills dyed with clay. They made colors from boiled plants and ash. They strung and painted with whatever the earth gave them. And then glass arrived first, through Arab traders, then via European ship sand. The beadwork exploded in complexity. Colors multiplied. The messages deepened. Old techniques were reborn in new materials. Beadwork became both a resistance and a renaissance. You ask Siza if there's ever been a time when beadwork stopped. He nods. There was silence during war, and again during apartheid. Fear makes the hands forget. That silence, he says, wasn't just about safety. It was grief held so tightly it couldn't be stitched into words. And yet, even during the worst times, some kept beating, in secret, in corners, stitching hope when there was nothing else to hold on to. People think beadwork is soft, he says, but it has teeth. You think back to Busey, the bead healer, and to the woman who made necklaces from dreams, and to the firelit storytellers who wove memory from color. Yeah, Beadwork definitely has teeth. Before he leaves, Sizwas hands you a tiny cloth-wrapped bundle. Something to take with you, he says, not because it's old, because it waited. Inside is a single shell bead, creamy white, slightly chipped. It's cool in your palm. Wear it, he says, or bury it. Either way, it remembers. You sit there a little longer after he goes, holding that shell bead like a whisper. You place it next to the green bead Busey gave you. They don't match, but somehow they belong together. As you stand and brush the dust from your knees, you glance back at the place of sleeping colors. It doesn't look like much from a distance, just dirt and stones. But now you know better. Now you know what waits just below the surface, tiny. Deliberate fragments of human feeling, holding on through centuries of silence. And just like that, the wind changes. A gust kicks up, brushing your cheeks with dry warmth. Somewhere in the distance, you hear laughter. Or maybe it's just birds. Time to head back. You turn toward the path, pocket heavy with memory. Behind you, the buried beads keep their quiet vigil. You leave the place of sleeping colors behind, though it never really leaves you. As you walk, you find yourself reaching into your pocket again and again, fingers brushing the cool edges of the shell and green bead. They rattle faintly like a secret handshake between the past and the present. You don't know where you're headed next. Not exactly. But your feet carry you east, toward a rising column of smoke and the faint echo of drums. Today you're being invited to a wedding. Well, technically, you're just crashing one. But the Zulu concept of umshado dosin tea exactly have a guest list with tight security. You're present, respectful, and interested in learning, you're welcome. Just don't stand too close to the cows. You arrive as the preparations are hitting full tilt. Young men in traditional garb are herding cattle toward a central pen, dust rising in theatrical swirls. Women, their hair wrapped in bright cloth, carry enormous pots on their heads, with zero sign of strain, despite the obvious weight. Someone hands you a small, round cake-a-dents, sweet thing that tastes like honey and maize. Congratulations, you're now emotionally invested. And then you see her, the bride. She stands at the edge of a hut, half in shadow, ringed by women who are helping her don the final pieces of her outfit. And it's breathtaking. Yeah, the beadwork is everywhere. On her head is an isakolo, a hat so red and broad it looks like the sun got stuck mid-rising, rimmed with tightly woven bead loops, alternating in red, white, and green. Each row tells a story her clan, her mother's clan, a symbol for prosperity, a symbol for safe childbirth. It's essentially a wearable autobiography, and the hat alone could get its own museum wing. Her neck is wrapped in coils of beads pressed against skin in a hug of color. Her chest bears a bib-like panel, densely beaded in triangles and chevrons. Then there's the skirt, long, swinging, with strips of beaded cloth that click softly as she walks, like applause meant only for her. A mainstream historical gem for you. Traditional Zulu wedding attire is a ceremonial blend of personal identity and tribal honor. The beadwork is not decorative fluff, it's sacred script, speaks across generations, and in many cases, across former enemies. In times of arranged marriages, a well-made bead outfit could ease political tension. Beads weren't just style, they were diplomacy. You sidle up next to an older woman who's been overseeing the preparations. She smiles without looking at you and mutters, she used the old pattern. Her grandmother's. From before the mango trees were planted. It's unclear if she's impressed or worried, maybe both. The ceremony begins with dance. Feet slap the earth in unison, kicking up dust that clings to the beadwork like a blessing. The bride's party performs a slow, deliberate movement, punctuated by ululations, those high, trilling calls that sound like joy being stretched across the sky. As the groom's party arrives, a burst of beaded shields appear. No, not battle shields, decorative ones, worn as armbands and belts. They re-part of the playful challenge ritual where the bride sad pretends to resist the marriage. It's all symbolic, mostly. Some of those kicks look a little too real. During the exchange of gifts, you notice something curious. A young girl steps forward and offers the groom a small string of black and white beads. Just a few, really. But his eyes soften when he receives them. He ties them onto his belt immediately. Ask someone nearby what they meant? They're from his younger sister. They whisper, she's wishing him loyalty. Ah, there it is. Again, those silent words spoken in color. Now for a fringe tidbit that few beyond this community ever hear. There is a quiet superstition around green beads at weddings. It's said they must only be used in even numbers. Odd-numbered greens are believed to invite disharmony or wandering eyes. So during prep, you'll often see older women double-counting every strip of beadwork to avoid scandal, because nothing says blessing like accidental hex prevention. The wedding proceeds with more dancing, chanting, and eventually a feast that appears out of nowhere: simmering meats, roasted corn, fermented sorghum beer in ceramic jugs. You eat enough to feel like you're 10% grain, 90% joy. As dusk rolls in, the beadwork catches the golden light, glowing like coated fireflies. Children wear tiny versions of the bridal patterns, mimicking her steps. You realize that what you're re-witnessing is not just a union of people, it's the rebinding of threads that go all the way back to forgotten ancestors. Historians still debate the origins of specific Zulu wedding bead patterns. Some say they're native, purely endogenous designs, shaped by the natural dyes and regional clay pigments. Others argue that Portuguese traders may have influenced some of the diamond motifs. One wild theory even suggests that post-Silk Road glass beads from Asia accidentally set new aesthetic trends when they arrived along unexpected trade routes. Either way, what's clear is that the symbolism adapted and endured, growing ever more intricate as it was, passed hand to hand, heart to heart. As the fire is lit and the dancing circles begin again, you find yourself clutching your own pocketed beads tightly. You're not a bride, you're not even Zulu, but you feel ... connected. Like the thread of your presences, however lightly, brush the fabric of something much older. It's one of the younger bridesmaids notices you watching and leans over. "You want a bead?" she offers, holding out her palm. You nod. She places a single yellow bead in your hand. "Warm, bright, for laughter," she says. "Keep it close." It joins the others in your growing collection. A little heavier now, a little warmer. As the moon rises, you sit on a woven mat surrounded by 100 laughing people, the sound of singing rising like a tide. Somewhere in the shadows, the bride glows, and across her chest, her stories shine. By now, your fingers know each bead by feel: the smooth shell, the textured green, the sun-bright yellow. They're like pebbles from dreams you've had more than once familiar, even when their full meanings drift just out of reach. You wake beneath a woven thatch awning, breath clouding gently in the morning chill. The wedding guests have mostly dispersed, though a few snoozing figures still lie wrapped in blankets, curled like commas in the sentence of the earth. Today's path leads you not toward celebration or ceremony, but toward industry, because as much as beadwork tells stories and channels emotions, it's also an economy, a trade, a legacy of commerce that threads through colonial maps, dusty trading posts, and the cool clink of coins dropped on a counter. You hitch a ride with a bead seller named Non Lanelock, her noni. She says whose truck rattles like it's built more from hope than hardware. In the back are sacks of beads, modern ones, mass-produced ones, and some clearly older, sealed in jars like precious jam. She sells at markets, she says, and sometimes directly to crafters. But she also supplies 2 fashion designers in Johannesburg, 2 museum curators. In this part, she says, with a wink to some Australians with more enthusiasm than taste. You bounce along gravel roads, passing tiny craft stalls like mirages. Women sit under umbrellas, threading beads onto strips of leather or fishing line. Some use safety pins as looms. One woman uses the back of a spoon. It's quiet, focused work, the kind of labor that speaks in calloused fingers and perfect tension. A mainstream fact for you to thread in. During the colonial and apartheid eras, beadwork became one of the few ways Black South African women could earn income independently. Many operated informally, selling at roadside markets or through urban middlemen, who paid little and profited greatly. Still, despite structural challenges, this quiet economy persisted and, in many areas, flourished. But here's a twist or quirky bead fact for the day. In the 1930s, the South African government tried to regulate beadwork under something called the Native Arts and Crafts Center Initiative. The idea was to commercialize acceptable cultural products, which meant encouraging Zulu women to abandon traditional motifs in favor of sanitized, tourist-friendly designs. Like Zulu, zebra, bookmarks? No, really. The program failed spectacularly, mostly because the women just kept doing their own thing anyway. Still, there's tension. You arrive at a town market and immediately you feel it. The divide between authentic and performative. Some stalls sell genuine work, painstakingly hand-bedded necklaces and panels with layered meaning. Others offer bulk bead necklaces, made from imported plastic, priced for busloads of tourists. They're colorful. They're cheap. They say Africa in blocky, vaguely tribal fonts. You spot a necklace that looks suspiciously familiar. A copy of the design you saw on the wedding bride's chest. Only this version is flatter, less vibrant, and its beads are oddly shiny. Mass-produced? Maybe in China? You point it out to Noni? She shrugs. Someone saw it on Instagram. Now everyone wants one, even if they don't know what it means. She gives you a tired smile, especially if they don't. Browse a bit, watching as tourists pick through necklaces like souvenirs rather than messages. Beadwork as aesthetic, stripped of context. But you also spot locals buying two young girls, elders. Even one stylish guy with gold-rimmed sunglasses and a bead-wrapped cane. So it's not all hollow. The tradition still breathes. Historians still argue whether the commercialization of beadwork dilutes or preserves its meaning. Some say the trade keeps the craft alive, funding materials and training for the next generation. Others argue that removing the symbolism guts the work like printing a poem in Comic Sans. Yet others insist that cultural evolution is inevitable, and what matters is that the thread continues, even if the pattern changes. You make your way to a quieter corner of the market where older artisans sit on blankets, selling fewer pieces, but at noticeably higher quality. One woman's fingers fly so quickly it's like watching music. You sit beside her, and she doesn't look up. "You want to learn?" she asks flatly. You nod. She hands you a needle, a line of fishing wire, and a little dish of beads sorted by color. She taps a pattern sheet with her fingernail. "We'll do this one. It speaks of rain. The first stitch is a disaster. The thread snags. Your tension's all wrong. You drop a bead and try to fish it out of the mat. The woman clicks her tongue softly but doesn't scold. "You've got to feel it," she says. "Don't think so hard." The beads know, and honestly, they kind of do. After a few rows, your breathing slows. You fall into rhythm. Over-under, pinch-pull, color pick. Each motion feels like a lullaby for your fingers, a subtle sedative. Your row is uneven, sure, but it holds. You made it, you. Someone who once thought a loom was just a medieval punishment device. The woman finally glances at your work and gives a small nod. "Keep practicing," she says, "and don't sell it. Give it." Beads mean more when they travel for free.
No.
You tuck your crooked row into your pocket. Add it to the pile. You're not building jewelry. You're making a map. Before leaving, Noni buys you a simple bracelet thread. White-blue. She grins. "For protection," she says. From Instagram knockoffs. The truck rattles back toward the hills, sun sinking low. You look out at the blur of stalls, people, blankets, and beads. Some real, some not. Some carrying meaning. Others just sparkle. You realize beadwork isn't sacred because it's old. It's sacred because people keep choosing it, even when it's hard. Even when it doesn't sell. Even when it's copied and exported and watered down. Because someone, somewhere, still sits under a tree with a bowl of colors and says, "This one means home." You press the bracelet to your palm. Let it warm.
But
Tomorrow, you'll follow the thread again. Tonight, let the beads rest. The thread pulls you onward, and this time, it leads to silence. Not the silence of sleep, or of an empty field after the harvest, but the kind that hums under the skin of a museum. You step into one of those gently lit spaces, the air hushed, the floors polished to a near-liquid shimmer. It smells faintly of wood polish and climate-controlled history. You've walked straight into a beadwork exhibit, probably curated by someone with glasses, cardigan, and far too many post-it notes stuck to their laptop. You're not sure what to expect, but the first thing you see stops you cold. A massive panel of beadwork, 6 feet wide, hanging like a tapestry. Not framed, just breathing. It's the opposite of loud, and yet it speaks so much. The colors swirl in organized chaos. Red, black, turquoise, cream. Symbols repeat. Diamonds, arrows, tiny stick figures. This isn't fashion, it's memory suspended. You step closer. The label beside it reads, Zulu beaded panel, mid-20th century, KwaZulu natal. believed to be a funerary piece or a narrative of family lineage. Donor unknown. That last part stings. Donor unknown. Someone once loved this piece. Someone must have stitched it with trembling fingers and meaning so urgent it hurt. And now here it hangs, divorced from its original storyteller. Yet despite the distance from its homeland, it endures. Here's your mainstream history moment. In the late 19th and 20th centuries, anthropologists and collectors began acquiring beadwork with the kind of fervor usually reserved for ancient scrolls or royal crowns. Entire collections were shipped off to European museums, sometimes bought, often taken, always framed as preservation. Today, dozens of bead panels live in places like the British Museum or the Smithsonian. It's tucked away in ethnography halls with mood lighting and overly simplified captions. But here's a weirder, more fringe tidbit. In the 1980s, a single mislabeled Zulu necklace in a European museum was classified as tribal neck adornment, possibly from the Amazon. It sat in the wrong drawer for almost 2 decades, until a visiting South African curator blessed their observant. Saul recognized the color pattern as an Isisulu mourning sequence. That museum quietly corrected the tag. No announcement, just shuffle and move on. You wander deeper into the gallery. There's a room devoted to love letter strips of beadwork once exchanged between sweethearts, each color sequence crafted to whisper private things. The descriptions are precise, but they don't tell you how the beads felt when passed between 2 calloused hands. They don't explain how long someone waited for a reply, how it felt when no answer came. You pause at a display featuring beaded aprons for young girls, decorative yet instructive, meant to teach modesty, maturity, and clan identity. Some have little bells sewn in, not for sound, but as a secret weight, a reminder to walk with intention. Near the end of the exhibit, you find a digital screen looping interviews. In one clip, an elderly beadworker smiles as she recalls hiding her best patterns from colonial inspectors. They didn't know what they were looking at, she chuckles. So we gave them pretty ones with no meaning, kept the real ones for home. Historians still argue whether the presence of beadwork in museums helps or hinders cultural revival. Some claim it educates, preserving fragile traditions in a world that forgets quickly. Others insist that removing context strips the work of power, that these beads belong not under glass, but on skin, in ceremonies, in songs passed mouth to mouth. You sit for a while on a bench facing the largest panel, and it happens the thing you didn't expect. You start to hear it. Not out loud, not in words, but in the hush, in the soft hum of museum air, in your own heartbeat slowing. You hear the echoes, the whisper of a grandmother threading her daughter's wedding skirt, gentle chiding of a bead vendor rearranging her wares, the playful rhythm of a child's bracelet jingling against a bare thigh. The museum can never replicate the ceremony, but sometimes it catches the echo. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough. You reach into your pocket. You've collected them now. The cowrie, the green bead, the yellow one for laughter, your first stitched row, the bracelet Noni gave you, each one tagged with its own memory, its own warmth. You think of the wedding, the weaving circle, the love tokens traded in secret. You think of the woman who said, beads mean more when they travel for free. And here they are traveling, not for sale, not for show, but for meaning. You slide the green bead from your pocket and quietly place it at the base of the panel just for a moment. No one sees, or if they do, they pretend not to. Maybe the bead belongs here, maybe it doesn't, but it feels like a gift, conversation across glass. Then, softly, you take it back. You walk out of the museum. The air outside smells different, fresher, like something ending and something beginning, all at once. You don't know where your next step leads, but your pocket is full of stories, and your hands remember the rhythm. Now it's time to let go of the colors for a while. Feel yourself soften, like thread relaxing after a long pull. Your breath eases into something slower, steadier, like someone threading a final bead, knotting it carefully and laying the work to rest for the night. You've walked dusty paths and danced under wedding fires. You've crouched beside grandmothers with needles in their fingers and quiet magic in their eyes. You've held laughter in a bead, memory in a shell, and stories in every shimmering loop of color. The hum of the world fades now. The marketplace closes. Museum lights dim. And the last drumbeat of celebration melts into a low, contented silence. As you lie still Imagine the feel of those beads again, cool and smooth, each one a breath caught in glass. They no longer need to be read or interpreted. Now they just are. They keep watch at your side, tiny guardians of meaning. And they're not asking anything of you. Just rest. Let the thread fall. The pattern will still be there when you wake. And maybe when the sun returns, your fingers will know exactly where to begin again.